second scenario I want to show you was a little different. It was a regional company, and we had 40 offices in the Lafayette area, in the Lafayette area, 40 offices in the New Orleans area. 10 offices in the Lafayette area, 10 offices in New Orleans, 10 offices in Baton Rouge, 10 offices in North Louisiana, 40 in Louisiana. Okay. Then we had a bunch more in the Chicago area, in the in the West Illinois, and the South Illinois. And then we built 10 more offices in North Alabama and South Alabama. So what I was assigned to was to come in and help support and do the same thing for the remote teams in very similar scenario. Most of them were at offices, but there was a large handful of people that were working from their cars. They had multiple remote offices. Some of them were working from home. And then as we grew and we standardized and we stabilized everything and we showed profit and growth, then we opened up Alabama. And that's the beauty of this, that once the executives see that you're going to get yourself organized and that it works, then folks start realizing, wow, what's the possibility of this? Well, sure enough, we opened up Alabama, and within 2 years, within 16 months, 12 to 18 months, every single office was self-sustaining, profitable, so that in 2 years, because we opened up the Alabama offices really fast, back to back, we proved ourselves that it didn't matter if it was an existing office, existing teams, add teams, add teams to the network, or open new offices. We pretty much knew you follow this technique, you follow the 10 steps, you make sure all the district managers are following the 10 steps, you make sure the local team leaders are following the 10 steps, you make sure the state directors are following the 10 steps, and you make sure everyone is aligned using the same style of support, the same style of setup, and the same style of culture building. All right, so in that scenario, however, I was hired and I was brought on board and said, all right, Maurice, we have these offices. And so I asked basically the question, okay, do we have a list of who is where? There was no list, okay? So I had to spend a lot of time figuring out who was where, who was sitting where, phone numbers, contact information, who did what. It took a long time, but we got that done. All right, then I basically got with the directors, the regional directors, and said, all right, does everybody have their tools and their setup? I said, Maurice, half of us have no backup printers. Half of office, the scanners aren't working. Computer problems, we have them all over the place. And I was like, okay, great. So then we had to go and set all that up and make sure they all had it. For the folks that were working remotely and from their cars, same issue. Scanners weren't working at their houses, printers weren't working. The webcamming was beginning to come out at that time, because this was in the early 2004, 2005. So we were starting to have video technology. To set everybody up. Even today, you think it's easier, but it's not. I'll tell you that in just a second. All right, then did everybody have their goals? No, they kind of did, maybe did. What I heard from the executives all the time was they should have their goals, yeah, but they're not really well communicated. They haven't been really trained on them. Then the non-remote tasks, this became the problem because items 1, 2, and 3 weren't very well defined. So what happened? The remote teams wanted the home office to do a lot of their stuff. Why? Because I can't scan here. So I want to pass over that to the home office, to some other team. And the home office team is sitting there going, that's not our job. So number 4 became an issue because we weren't set up with the right equipment, and folks didn't know what their goals were tied to the equipment and the setup they had. So therefore, it became a debate as to who did what, and number 4 became a major obstacle. We had to clear that up and eventually check mark, but that took a long time. Okay, but we got that done real quickly. All right, then number 5, very few of them knew how to update the software, and that became probably the longest delay to get everybody accustomed. First of all, to get them convinced that, okay, so you really want me to enter everything into the software, okay? And if there's one issue that keeps companies before the coronavirus, and I'm noticing it already here, is having everybody buy into the idea that, yes, you have to enter data either into your Salesforce or into your software where you keep the data, so that we all don't have to chase each other via email. Everybody updates the right software. which produces the reports where we can hold each other accountable and check progress. Other than that, if that doesn't happen, that's where everybody moves into micromanaging. Okay, because people aren't putting the data and they don't know where to put the data. So that was not a check mark. That was not fixed. Okay. Then I asked the question, does everybody know how to use the software? The answer was no. So we had to train folks on the software, knowing how to use. Half of them didn't even know how to use Excel. A lot of them didn't know how to use Word forms at all. So we had to do a lot of training. Okay. Then I got with the regional directors, the regional managers, and find out, okay, are you guys meeting with your offices on a regular basis? Now, remember, the regional directors, regional managers, they weren't at an office. They had remote offices, so they had to do virtual 80, 90% of the time, but there was no rhyme or reason of when they met, when they talked. So there's always constantly chasing each other, calling at the wrong time. Lori always calls us when we have 30 people in the office and there's high traffic, and she wants to talk to me about why such and such didn't happen. And I talk to Lori and I say, yeah, but every time I call her, she never answers the phone. So I talk to the branch manager, and the branch manager says, yeah, but every time I call her, all she wants to do is chew me out, and it's always the wrong time. Well, what all that backs up to is the fact that there's not a commitment, a regular commitment of when we're going to sit down and have those conversations when we're not in the middle of the highest traffic peak periods in those offices. So number 6 wasn't being done. All right. Then, all right, back at the home office where I sat, okay, where we get in together as a team, the claims department, the adjusters, the underwriters, the IT team, and the engineers, did we get together on a regular basis and look at what's happening out in the field to support all of our money-making producers out there? And the answer was no. So I had to run around from department to department to get the leadership team on the same page regarding problems, regarding issues. So every time I heard issues from the field, I didn't have a commitment from my peers of when we'd sit down and listen to each other. So the claims didn't have a way to talk to me on a regular basis and me to underwriting, because there was no commitment to come together and act like a leadership team. So therefore, number 7, that was not being done. Team-wide calls took me forever to convince them, but we did it, all right? We got to it. And the coolest thing about the team meetings is that, remember, we ended up having 90 offices. So what we decided to do is have daily huddles, and they were fantastic. Okay, we would set up conference calls like this. They weren't video; they were all calls, and we would set up a 6-minute call starting at 8:30 with the first group of 20 offices. Then at 8:40, another 6 minutes, and at 8:50, another. So that by 9 o'clock, we pretty much had the vast majority, if not all, the offices. Eventually, when we got Alabama, that took till 9:10, 9:15. But nonetheless, between 8:30 and 9:15, daily huddles where we created a lot of engagement and a lot of positive feedback. And then on Friday, we turned it back around. We didn't do any of those daily huddles. We let them huddle on their own and collect information so that they knew when they were going to meet with Maurice and the regional managers on how to bring things up that needed fixing. So even though at the beginning that was not the case, we had to build that, but it didn't have it when I started. And of course, we didn't have much fun build around it, but there was enough of it to where I was able to build around that. So when I got started with the second scenario of that job, notice this is what I started with. I started with 2 of the elements in place, and I had to go and build all the other 8. So when I assessed, it took me 1 month, a month and a half to go assess this, because first of all, we didn't have the pressure of Corona. Second of all, we didn't have the technology that we have now to where I could assess real fast. The first month, we had to assess this and start setting this up, and then we built it. Now, because we not only have the urgency of the Corona pressure, but the technology is there. You can assess this within a matter of days. Why? Because you have the list. And then you just have to know, all right, well, what are the components and elements of each one of these items, and know how to set them up. But hopefully by me giving you the 2 scenarios of real life, real world experience of how I faced one that was already set up for me, and all I had to do was walk in and be successful. The second scenario, having learned from the first scenario, I realized this isn't set up. I'm not going to be successful. I have to hurry up and set it up correctly and make sure that the tools, the equipment, the communication, and all the commitments are made by the teams so that I could be successful. And sure enough, every team that I've done this with, it didn't matter whether we did this in a matter of weeks or a matter of months. Every time we put this into place, it's only a matter of time of letting this happen and support all the supervisors that are having to support everybody, and it doesn't matter who's sitting where, you will see growth. Short of a virus, short of a meteor hitting the earth, this works. It really works. Why? Because you're empowering the supervisors and you're empowering the team, and the executive team is not diving in, having to go and get into the weeds, and the managers aren't having to go and micromanage. You support the structure, and it works.